or D&D 5e, and then a year of Pathfinder 2e with Messy B. I've played all sorts of different characters from, warlock, mages, barbarian, paladin, from all the different systems. I really enjoy the improvisation and the role playing aspect of things. Not that I don't like the fighting, I just think I'm a very distractible person, and
Mm.
so during fights, I'm like, I used to get in trouble with our other one, like my old campaign, because I would like start chit chatting about stuff, and I'm like, no, focus. I have to figure out what I'm doing. Um,
But
but
that's the beauty of like an in-person campaign is that you can have this
mhm.
side banter and then
And then I'd be
sometimes
like, what am I doing?
have no idea
My
what's
turn.
going on. That's
Uh,
that's on the DM for not making it jazzy, I say.
yeah. I mean, it was a good time. I've had my experience with D&D 5e was definitely homebrew, Elder Scrolls Morrowind themed, so I feel like for the most part we stuck pretty close to it. He just called things, I think, things more in line with the Elder Scrolls lore if it
Hmm.
was. But yeah, that is generally about my experience. I love reading the books. I have so many different systems that I just buy, and then I'm like, what am I gonna do?
I'm never gonna play this. Yeah,
Like I got Vampire Masquerade, and I'm like, who's gonna want to play this
me.
complicated? I can't
Me,
even
I
do
have
it.
played. Oh my god, I'm gonna. This is gonna be another 2 hour video because we're gonna talk about so much like random things. I played Vampire Masquerade with my group therapy. I was in like outpatient group therapy for like 6 hours a day in college, like intense. Like we're gonna make conflict in this group therapy and talk about it, like really, really like. And I decided to play Vampire the Masquerade with these people, and man, all of our characters were manifestations of our maladaptive behaviors, and it was quite thrilling. It was. I'm not gonna lie, but ooh, there was some drama. But I will play the fuck out of Vampire the Masquerade. Oh my god,
Okay.
it's cool.
I'm planning like a one shot for my family, and I want to use Vampire the Masquerade, but I just don't think it's worth trying to get them to do that for like a one shot. But yeah,
Hmm.
we should connect on that because I just want to play
I am
vampires.
sure so many of us that we play with will cream our jeans over playing Vampire the Masquerade. Like we love spooky things. We love
Yes.
it. Um where were oh yeah, our history with like D&D and stuff. So if you've been watching the channel, y'all know my like history with like tabletop role playing games. I played like all of them and I read all of them. I've been playing for so many years since like middle school. I played started off with 3.5, played 4, played 5, Pathfinder 1, Pathfinder 2, other ones that obviously Vampire. I tried playing Shadowrun and then walked away from that because it's just so fucking hard. It is so fucking hard. And then kind of racist apparently. Um but that's a different topic for a different day because today we're talking about D&D 1 or D&D 6e, but not really, or 5.5, but not really because it's all going to be one edition. So, tell me, how much do you know about like this new edition and how they're rolling it out and like the kind of the fanfare around it?
Honestly,
Mm-hmm.
very little.
That's fair.
I
That's
I
fair.
think the way it was described to me, or the way I heard it, and I
Mm-hmm.
just kind of like didn't process like things were happening, was that it was like almost like after it's rolled out, it's just gonna be like updates as opposed to a new
Mm-hmm.
edition each time. I think someone
Mm-hmm.
was like Windows or like whatever,
Mm-hmm.
Microsoft, it's just gonna be like this is it, and then we'll just keep rolling out patches
Mm-hmm.
or
Yeah.
whatever. But ah,
You are completely right. If you need to pick up that, go for
yes.
it. Yeah, you are completely right about that. They are saying that they're completely getting rid of like additions and just patching things through D&D Beyond. And a lot of people are like, because you're going to have to subscribe. You're going to
Mhm.
have to buy this shit on D&D Beyond, where in the past you would have the options of like getting the book secondhand or like I don't know other ways, and then you have to buy it again if you want to use it on Roll 20 or like Foundry or whatever. So a lot of people are kind of like miffed about it. I think it's might be another fourth edition fiasco, if you ask me, but we'll see. They're making their own version of a tabletop like online thing that'll break everybody's computers. I'm sure if it's anything like Foundry, like it's just gonna blow our computers up. Like the other day, this is neither here nor there, but if you guys watch the Strength 1000 stream, you'll notice that it ends abruptly because Foundry shut my computer down because it was such a resource hog.
Oh my
I was
gosh.
like, we're out, we're done, you're done for today. Or maybe something's wrong with my computer. I don't know. But but let's get into it. They released the second round of
Uh,
Pat. Well,
oh,
go ahead. Yes, go ahead.
no, you go ahead. You go ahead. I
Oh,
realize that
this
you're.
the second round of new stuff for this not edition, not edition. Before they released like the core ancestries, where they added some and really took away some of the stat bonuses tied to like race and stuff. They still kept the wording of race, which I'm like, you're really not listening to anybody right now, Wizards. Wow. Um, but they're doing some cool things, making sure each like ancestry has like a cool like keystone ability that I think will be relevant like throughout play. And now they released their first batch of classes, which are the experts. So, first question, Eat Free. In the beginning of this PDF, did you see this part where they broke out which role each class is in?
Yes.
Thoughts about that?
I think it's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I'm a I'm an organizational person. Like I
Okay.
love organizing, and so it felt like for me the class groups gave like a focus for that kind of just grouping, like, and it
Mm-hmm.
helps especially with like I think understanding fundamentally aspects of those classes and how they relate to other classes, because I think it's easy to be like, oh, each class like is magic user or a fighter
Mm-hmm.
type, not fighter, but like you know what I mean, like
Yeah.
that, and that's kind of how you break it up. But I think this kind of gives it a different way to like understand that groups, like what they pull their from, whether it's their attacks,
Mm-hmm.
melee, or spells or
We're being
whatnot.
skillful.
There you go.
Absolutely. I completely agree. A lot of people they did something like this in like fourth edition where they kind of laid out the strategies of like each class in like a umbrella class. They had like strikers, tanks, leaders, controllers. I don't remember all of them because 4E was a really long time ago. But they kind of laid it out there. And nerds be bitches. They really didn't like that. They really didn't like being like hemmed in. But I agree. I think having these kind of overarching like strategies or themes, like this is how this class is supposed to be played, it's really helpful, especially for new people who don't really know kind of the ins and outs of an RPG. And I really see D&D as being that like kind of beginner's game because a lot of the mechanics are like simpler and way easier to like digest than like say a Pathfinder second edition. Um so yeah, I agree that's really helpful. But
And I
how
think like, oh,
oh go for it, go for it.
I was gonna say, I think I can see why maybe the initial, like that, the 4E kind of grouping might have made people a little bit squirrely, just because from what you're saying, and I don't
Mm-hmm.
really have any knowledge into it, like you might. not want to be a tank, but your class is
Mhm.
in a tank. Now, I feel
Mhm.
like these are more like concepts, like an expert in something or like
Mhm.
a priest of some sort. And I think when you look at the way they've grouped them, it doesn't really tell you how to play your character. It just kind of gives you like generally what your character and your class is like, again, pulling their motive, not motivation, but like they're pulling their skills from their focus, as
Mhm.
opposed to like, oh, I'm a tank or I'm a whatever.
Mhm.
And then maybe this is also just because like I like played video games a lot, and I feel like a lot
Mhm.
of times you do kind of put your class or whatever you choose into a type of group so you
Mhm.
understand how to play that character.
Mhm. Yeah. And yeah, I agree. They're definitely grouping them more by vibe than like mechanical benefit.
Vibe, that is
It's
the word
all the
I've been looking for.
vibology. Yeah. Oh my god, I always just like I don't know now. I'm just gonna call it a vibe or a
A
girl.
vibe.
Like
This is my class vibe.
yeah, I mean, yeah, that's a vibe. Yeah. I mean, if anyone's gonna talk shit about like calling in class having a specific vibe, they're dumb because each of these classes have a vibe. Um, but I think a lot of people also are, and you know me, I'm all about customizing my character to be a beautiful little snowflake that's completely different than everybody else's. And a lot of people bristle, are kind of with me with that and bristle against being put into these options. Um, but I feel like previously in fifth edition, and I don't know how like deeply you went like into these character options, it seemed like they were really a lot of these subclasses that they would make would be, oh, you're a bard, but we're gonna give you a rogue sneak attack. And so now you're like
Mhm.
the dark bard or the dirge or something. Or like, oh, you're a monk, but we're gonna give you that fighter subclass so you could
Mhm.
also be kind of like a fighter. And it really wasn't special, and it really you were just becoming another like an exact replica of that other class. Or having subclasses like the Circle of Dreams Druid and like the Unicorn Warlock having the exact same like healing features. Like they did that, and so people who are kind of freaking out about this like choice, they need to calm down. They need to calm down and eat some bread.
We all need to eat some bread.
We all need to eat some bread. Oh, Kim. Um, let's see. This will quickly become a Real
Yeah, we
Housewives
gotta.
stream. We gotta. It's so on my mind right now. So the first class that we have within this grouping of experts, which, as you explained, the experts are polymaths who have the expertise feature and elements of other classes. I didn't clock this elements of other classes.
Mhm.
I don't know how I feel about that.
Yeah, I mean,
Thoughts?
thoughts were I didn't collect that either necessarily, but I will say and I'm looking at my little notes here. I've got like notes in like five places because I just said I really like organization, but then I was like, I'm gonna put notes here and here and here. Um, I mean, okay. I honestly feel like, from my understanding, and probably why I've never played any of these, is that's kind of the vibe I always got from these classes to begin with, is that they were like, it felt like they didn't, I don't know, maybe I'm being spicy
No,
here,
call it
but
out.
I just always
Speak
felt
your
like,
truth.
you know, like a ranger was just like a fighty nature melee druid,
But now we
and
said it.
yeah, now I said it. And rogues were just like slippery little people who, like, I don't know. And then bards for me were totally an enigma. Like, my husband played a bard, and I actually asked him, like, what would you say
What?
you felt like a bard, like the core vibe of the bard was? And he was like, I don't know, I just kind of made them a jack of all trades, which meant I wasn't good at anything.
That's you really spoke to it. Like I 100% agree with a lot of these. I think the only one that gets away with being its own kind of thing is a rogue
Mhm.
because they have the sneak attack feature. They wear like
Mhm.
leather armor. But a ranger and a bard, that could just be a fighter and a rogue subclass. And then you
Mhm.
know what? And it often becomes that. Or a
Yeah.
druid. Like,
And I feel like honestly when I was reading through the playtest material, like the rogue had new stuff, but I feel like it didn't feel as like changed. It felt like more tweaked than the
mhm.
other two. Like I really felt excited or intrigued by some of the choices they made for the other two. When like Rogue,
Same.
I was like, oh okay, like that's fair. Like I could see why you would do that, or like that's fair. And I
Like
think
you
it is,
could jump using dex. That's like the only new thing. And I'm like,
yeah. And so I think it kind of is to your point where like of these three, if I feel like Rogue definitely did kind of stand on its own legs, two legs. I don't even know what I'm talking about. I don't know idioms or cliches, and so I don't
that's
know why I'm trying to
okay. Hey,
figure
this is
into
Messy
it.
Beast. This is a messy stream. We're
Um,
rolling with it.
but like I think, of my notes, the things I was more intrigued by were some of the ways that they handled like the bard and the ranger. And I had like we had a ranger specifically in one of my longest campaigns I was in. That was the one I was in for like 3 or 4 years.
Well,
We played
yeah.
every week in
Wow.
person. They lived like right down the street, so we could just walk there. But it was still a lot to do every week after work.
Mm-hmm.
And then like not have an evening because we would do like the whole like 3 to 4 hours. So,
Oh yeah.
um, and I could tell like I think our DM actually helped that class out a little bit to make it a
Mm-hmm.
little bit less like not fun to play, because I feel like all of us were doing some big things, and then she'd be like,
I found some berries. No, that's like you're like completely correct because a lot of people when they rank the classes, ranger is one of the lowest, I guess, like tier of like cool things they could do. There's really no reason within 5th edition, and I think it was the same for 3rd edition as well, where you would want to take a rogue because they can't do anything as good as a druid or a fighter.
hmm.
um and that's something great about about my Lord and Savior Pathfinder 2E, because as we well know
Well,
that
oh well,
we don't need to
I
help
feel
our ranger out at all.
absolutely not. I feel like also like in theory, being a ranger, like I feel like would call to a lot of people because we have so many like good
Mm-hmm.
fantasy ranger inspiration throughout
Mm-hmm.
different, you know, franchises and of all
Mm-hmm.
sorts of media. And then you like get excited to play a ranger, and then you're like, and that's why she wanted to be this like smelling the grass and like realizing like what's going on or whatever. And
Mm-hmm.
it didn't give that to her. And so I think our DM helped it out a little bit.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. As a good DM does. As a good DM does. Um, but let's start out with the bard.
Hmm.
And this, as you mentioned, is a really slippery class to kind of like nail down because I think you think it's one thing and you keep reading, and then the thing that you thought it was isn't the thing at all. But let's get into it. What do you consider to be the quintessential bard experience? Like, what do you think are the holy grail items that every bard in every game should have? What's the fantasy? Tell me the fantasy.
Oh my gosh. So I think if we're going to just talk broadly, I feel like as a bard, what you're trying to probably create is some sort of extremely charismatic, but sometimes maybe a little bit like ineffective, but in a fun way. And maybe this is
Mhm.
just me because I love negativity. No, I love
Our toxic favorite,
um
free.
I love having, like a pro and a con to something. It's
Absolutely.
more fun when like things are a little bit tricky. So sorry,
Mhm.
tangent. Um,
No, that's not a tangent at all.
and for me, maybe I, I felt like the bard was kind of the good time person who is going to kind of boost up morale and
Mm-hmm.
sometimes help out in other ways, like maybe sometimes healing or maybe sometimes hitting things.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I just honestly felt like unless you from like a D&D perspective, or especially 5e, I
Mhm.
think it seems like a deceptively easy class to play because you're like, oh, I can just do all these different things and I can have, skills in different areas. I'm a little bit of a spellcaster, I'm a little bit of this, I'm a little bit of that. But
Mhm.
I think because of that, it can create a character that's too spread thin. And I
Yeah.
think that's what happened with my husband is that this was his first character ever, and I think
Mhm.
he just started like saying like, oh, that sounds cool and that sounds cool and that goes with the vibe I'm trying to create. But at the end of the day, like he kind of created this character that it was hard to play in a way that felt like he was keeping pace with everybody when it came
Mhm.
to combat or helping
Mhm.
out or knowing his place because we had clerics and people to do healing and other stuff. So
Mhm.
I don't know, that's how I felt in general about it. I think again of all of them, I have a harder time with the core identity of a bard.
Hell
But
yeah.
if you want a vision, and my vision whenever I hear bard is I think Yaskier. Like that's who I think.
Wait, who?
Yaskier, Dandelion from The Witcher.
Okay. I'm a bad nerd. I don't flex with The Witcher.
It's okay. I'm not like don't I'm also a bad nerd. I'm here for Henry Cavill in a
Oh,
white wig.
I've seen the photos. I've seen the
I'm
clips. I've
I mean
appreciated them,
I
but
do love it, but I have not played the games. I do
mm-mm,
want to. I think I
too
know it's
much
kind of
walking.
I think it's gonna suck me in. I'm definitely like a sucker for like a good game like that, but I don't
Mhm.
have the time.
No one's got the time for that anymore. But yeah, I think I agree with you on a lot of those things, and I think that the bard is the one class that so many people want to play and so many new people want to play, and so they kind of have to dumb it down.
Mhm.
But I feel like what the bard really should be is a class where you have very specific tools that you use to kind of make scenarios or situations work better in your favor,
Mhm.
as like a controller,
Mhm.
even with some like crowd control,
Mhm.
or um it's really hard. Like, I guess one of the best examples is like animate rope. One of like the best 3.5 spells for a bard was animate rope, and it seems like such a dumb fucking spell, but if you really get creative, you can kind of create so many like advantageous situations. And I feel like a bard should try to reward
Cre-
creative
yeah,
problem solving.
I agree. And I agree. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
they're kind of fundamentally pulling their vibe, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
from creativity, whether it is, musical, like the classic bard, or some sort of other
Mm-hmm.
vibe. Like they are kind of the ones that are distracting everybody while with their kind of bardiness, while everyone
Mm-hmm.
else is like, all right, go. But in a
Yeah.
helpful way, in a
It,
creative way.
like in a way that you're like, what did you do, Bard? I was just like, I spilled
I gave
some
everyone
soup.
bardic inspiration.
Yeah, or like I spilled some soup on the ground and they fell down, or
Yeah.
like, or I don't know, I showed my ankle. Like something that makes the bard's contributions on paper sound really dumb, but actually like really help. Or
Yeah.
even, and this is something that's like D&D and a lot of like tabletop role playing games are getting away from, and I think it's hurting the like genre, is that not every class needs to be super good at combat.
Mhm.
And sometimes those outside combat things can be so important. But I think a lot of DMs, and I'm guilty of this, really skip over like the exploration like aspect of D&D, and that's really what hurts the ranger as well.
I
Um
I
oh,
also think one of the things that, and it's taken me like a while to really understand when it comes to playing Pathfinder 2e versus, D&D 5e, is the kind of buff debuff sort of other aspects of combat that isn't just hit things, hit things, hit things. Now,
mhm,
right now I'm playing a character who really just hits things,
mhm,
but I think one of the things I've started to notice with my mage's character is the ways I can influence myself to become stronger, or um, utilizing my like different things for my barbarian to help
Mhm.
other people out. And I think
Mhm.
it seems like to me for Pathfinder 2e that it's a little bit easier to understand how you can do that when,
Mhm.
because again, I think it took me a while to kind of understand the buff debuff and like how to use them in combat. Not how to use them in combat, but how to
Mhm.
have that mindset. Because I'm
Yes.
so used to being like, when I'm in combat, I must hit something with something
Mhm.
else.
Or like I have advantage or only disadvantage instead of like a stacking like amount of different
Mhm.
buffs that like culminate.
Like I'm
Mhm.
still constantly surprised with how many times you'll get like you could make things frightened or whatever, and I just because I feel
Mhm.
like you just didn't run into stuff like that as much in 5e. Like you might a couple like have a handful of things that could do stuff,
Mhm.
but it really feels like there's a lot more like I literally can't remember the word right now. It's not.
Maybe like strategic expression maybe.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm. And I think that really comes from 5e's like double-edged sword of like the advantage disadvantage system. Because once you
Mhm.
get that debuff down, like there's no other kind of status penalty. I mean,
Mhm.
bardic inspiration definitely like bucks that trend, but
Mhm.
I mean, it's great because you do less math, but it's also not so great because it's like, okay, now one person got disadvantage on them, so now everyone just do attacks, and
Mhm.
just not everyone has an
Mhm.
attack for that. I definitely agree. Moving into the bard a little bit more, I think one of the like high level things that they really want the bard to be is to be like a healer.
Mhm. Mhm.
And that was kind of like optional in previous bards, but here it's very specific. Like if you're a bard, you are a healer. And I can or and like the buffer. And I cannot
Yeah.
tell you how many times I have played with a bard, and I have been this bard before, but like where they never used bardic inspiration to like buff.
Mm.
And now I'm like, part of me is kind of glad that they're making it so caked in, like this is a support
Mhm.
class, you're
Mhm.
supporting. But what do you feel about a bard being like explicitly a healer?
I think I think it makes sense. Like I
Mm-hmm.
agree with what you were saying about like the healer aspect of things as well as the bardic inspiration things. Like I wrote down like I like the kind of call out to healing for bardic inspiration, and I like the the like built-in like healer spells that they added in. And I think in general I liked how they really tried to imbue the magic of a bard, like how they really I think helped focus, like I don't, not that a bard didn't have the magic, but I really think they
Mm-hmm.
tried to um make a lot of these feats and in general the vibe like this is the magic that you have and this is like why you can do these certain things.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think honestly I feel like when I was reading the playtest materials I felt so much more, I could see the focus and the vibe that they were
Mm-hmm.
trying to go for with it. And then also with that, I think I liked, and this is kind of another aspect of it, just in
Yeah.
general. I liked how you aren't limited as much to the bard spell tables. Like you have that, like they've kind of grouped spells differently, if I am correct, right? Is
Yes, I
that?
wonder where they got that from
I know
though.
exactly. And I think it just opens up because I think it allows, again, I think it allows you to feel like your bard is not just this jack of all trades but
Mm-hmm.
has that spell casting underlying like focus, again not as a what's the groups, not a mage or a priest, but
Mm-hmm.
someone who can be an expert in arcane stuff
Mm-hmm.
as well.
Counterpoint, I want to hear your opinion
Mhm.
on this part as well. So they did give them like the arcane spell list, but
Mhm.
then followed up with the caveat of the schools of magic,
Mhm.
divination, enchantment, illusion, and
Mhm.
transmutation, which is a lot of the schools, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
It is a lot of them. But I was also like, oh, so that's how they're gonna do it.
Mhm.
That's how they're gonna do it. Okay, that's how they're gonna get rid of the occult spell list.
Mhm.
Um, and I'm chill with that. I'm okay with that. I think that's a good way to kind of like limit these kind of and not have a bard be like a wizard who heals,
Mhm.
and really like maintain the what am I trying to say? Maintain the
Like lane that it lives in.
yeah, the lane that it lives in. But what else I also found interesting, and then I mean, was that it didn't really have, and correct me if I'm wrong, it didn't really have a lot of abilities pertaining to like convincing people
Mhm.
or those skills like
It
checks.
Yeah, it didn't. I agree. And I think it's partially because they give you the jack of all trades a lot sooner than they did, if I remember correctly. And by remember correctly, I mean literally look at this. No, just kidding. They flipped that.
Oh, okay.
Ignore me.
No worries.
Um, I'm like, which one was it at this point? And now I've like lost my train of
Oh,
thought.
no worries.
No, I agree. Sorry, yes, I agree. They've kind of it's a lot less, and I think it is because of kind of what I said, where like it feels like they focused a lot on like driving home the spellcasting aspect and less of that like charismatic bardy aspect of it. And maybe it's because that's a little bit harder to grasp if you're trying to create a character and you've never created a character before, and leaving it up a little bit more to that charismatic figuring out how to use those kinds of feats and things
Mm,
like that could be a little bit more ambiguous or harder to figure out what you can do with it versus the focus on, the spell casting or
mm,
having, the bardic inspiration. I think the healing side of the songs of restoration, I'm just like reading the list, but the magical secrets, like I really feel like a lot of it was to drive home the magic of a bard and less of
hmm.
like the charisma.
And I kind of do like that as well because I feel like once you have a bard on the team, they're going to handle all social
Mhm.
situations and all role playing where everyone else just like stands there and like watches. And that's something I really don't like about a lot of the current systems is that
Mhm.
um there's always like the face,
Mhm.
and I'm kind of glad they didn't like make the bard like the
The
face or didn't
face.
even like consider that as like a place in here. So I'm really curious to see how they kind of like adapt that kind of play style.
I feel like like that kind of character building is really up to like, I mean, obviously you have like the primary abilities for your different classes, but
Mm,
other than that, I feel like it's hard when you feel like you're being shoehorned into that kind of role for a party,
mm, mm-hmm.
when I feel like that to me is where I want to have control over it.
Yeah.
I want to be like, I'm the paladin who's also the face somehow. I don't know how
Mm-hmm.
I
Oh
did
well,
that,
I
but
mean they have high charisma scores because
that's
everyone in
true.
D&D has high charisma scores. But like,
um,
yeah, no, I completely agree. Yeah, I completely agree, and I think this helps with that. Um,
I also just tend to be a person who likes to be the face even when I shouldn't be, as I feel like is clear in our Pathfinder society where me and Seven, Arena and Seven often go off and try to do things, and then I legitimately sometimes forget we're both bad at it, and then I'm
yeah,
like, oh, why did
you
we
look at your character sheet and you're like, oh, you look at everyone's character sheet and you're like, we're all bad at this. No
like
one.
why are we the ones talking to these people? But I'll take it.
Yeah, I think we Victor and I sat down and like went through his like character, and I think Kitsune actually has a little bit more charisma, but she dumped all of her skills now in intimidation. So that's gonna be introduced. That's her like keystone favorite skill now, and I'm like, oh
I mean,
boy.
I think it's kind of like realistic for my character. Like I
Oh
think she doesn't
yeah,
realize that she's not like
we have so many clips. I mean, of you guys just like shitting the bed at that kind of stuff, and that's what like the best stuff about D&D is those failures
Oh
and
yeah.
those like grand schemes. And I feel like I do like I like Bard as a support in battle, but I really wish they still kept a lot of things to encourage the Bard to make those like grand schemes and to
Do you
make
think
those
that
big
they'll
failures.
introduce like a subclass that will kind of focus that side of things? Because I mean, I read a bit of the thieves, not thief, the no, because for bards it's like the colleges, not
Yeah.
the subclasses.
Well, that's I mean that's a subclass college.
Yeah, so I don't know. I was just Yeah, I definitely didn't read the College of Lore that much because it.
Oh, no worries. It's like debuffing. And you can like roll twice. It's just really kind of souping up your bardic inspiration, which I like. I like how
Mhm.
they're. I hope that each subclass takes the
Bardic
keys,
inspiration.
because that's like the keystone ability that separates bard from like everybody else.
Absolutely.
And so I hope each class kind of plays with it more so than you can use your bardic inspiration to give yourself sneak attack. Like I want it to still be a support class, but different ways of doing it. But I don't know how 5.1 is going to do that. But with that being said, we're going to move on to the Ranger. The redheaded
Pew!
stepchild of Dungeons and Dragons. Sam is in the chat right now.
Oh my god, so she can hopefully help when I'm like, what? Uh,
And so, so she's probably fuming that I just called it the redheaded stepchild. Um, but in D&D 5e, it is the low. It's one of the lowest tier classes, alongside my favorite class. One of my favorite classes, the monk. Like I want to be a monk so fucking badly. I love kung fu movies. I love martial arts. I love fighting games,
I
obviously.
think I think also when you play a monk, you can just really do so much. I feel like when I was playing in my last D&D 5e game, I was a warlock, and so I'd had like two things I could do, or else it was just Eldritch Blast. I mean, not really, but like, I
Yeah,
feel
I
like
well, I
I would get
mean,
to my turn, and then my husband played a monk, and he would be like, "All right, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do this." And so
mm-hmm.
I feel I'm kind of like sad that monks aren't as.
You have to be really creative.
Mm.
But we'll get to that when we do the
Yes.
monks. But that was my bad. That was my bad. But I just wanted to commiserate with Sam, and she says, "No, that's accurate." Because it is the lowest, and I mean, I think Pathfinder 2e fixed it, and we can like get to that when we talk about it. But what do you think is the core vision, the fantasy, the jantasy of a ranger? I almost called it a rogue, and I'm like, well.
I wrote down fighty nature. Uh, like
Very
that's kind of
descriptive.
the that's kind of the core identity that I always got from the ranger vibe, is that you are the survivally, like fighty, like it's still, got that. I keep saying fighty, but like survivalist, the
hmm
person who's looking at the tracks and figuring out what's going on. But then, and it's maybe just the hunter like things that I was reading, but I feel like there's a lot of like rangy type stuff. I don't know.
Yeah, no, yeah, I could break it down. I see what you're saying, and I think something that's really important for the ranger is the perception, navigation,
Mhm.
tracking,
Mhm.
location kind of scenarios that the ranger can be put in. Is its bread and butter. I don't think that I don't know if fighting should really be. I think fighting or being really good at fighting could be like a sub feature. And maybe what I'm
Yeah.
about to say is too much like a druid, but I think that the ranger should be all about perception and knowledge of the battlefield and finding things.
Like practical nature, like a practical naturalist, like
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to like a and I mean practical in like that tangible sense, like you said,
Yeah,
tracking and
yes.
things like that.
Or in making traps and like
Mhm.
leading people and just being really knowledgeable in that regard.
And I
Um,
will say, I think that how my previous DM buffed the ranger for the other player was by making her a little bit more fighty, which might be why I have that fighty lean, because
yeah.
I think she would get a little like not upset, but I think it was hard for her because we didn't do a lot of exploration, so then a lot of her stuff was not really utilized. So I think he found ways to use it, or to adapt it to more combat versus like the tracking,
hmm
traps, etc., etc.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. And you kind of need to, because like that's the quickest way to make it viable without
Mhm.
spending
Overhauling it
hours and
yourself.
hours. Yeah. And I think that's what's really missing in a lot of, they kind of like touch on this, and I think that them getting, and I don't know if they get it in 5e because I never really played a ranger. Sam, chime in the chat. They get something called feral senses at
Mhm.
15, where they get
Mhm.
blind sight 30 feet, which I
Yes.
find really, really nice. I use Ranger to cherry pick the gameplay I like. I can be stealthy and useful in investigation, but also hit hard. Agreed, agreed. And I think I have a lot of ideas of what they could have done with this to make it better. Okay. What if the Ranger spell list was based off of the environment they are in,
Mm.
and that's how they interact with the environment instead of having a favorite environment?
Interesting.
Like, what if their primal spell list was different if they were in an Arctic environment compared to like a woods environment?
That's really interesting. I think that could be very like fun and it keeps it interesting and
Mm-hmm.
fresh. And it also like means that if you pick like let's say you pick your favorite environment to be the Arctic, but you never go to the Arctic, then you're like, well,
Mm-hmm.
can I like retcon and say actually it's X, Y, and Z
Mm-hmm.
because we're in that kind of environment more. I feel like that would make it I think a very like you are then kind of that person who knows all these nature things and it's oh I know in this area it's applicable. I feel like you can definitely use that in like the storytelling of your character.
Oh hell yeah. And then, or maybe like they forage around for their spell slots, and then you
Mm.
have to roll like survival skills to like see what
Ooh.
you get. Or make it a little bit of a crafting class. Like,
Mm.
make it a little more complicated. Like,
Make them an expert in nature.
make them an expert in nature and survival. Give them the like snares and traps like as a baked in feature. I think that's like give them the ability to make simple alchemical items, and so they are kind of like, I have a tool for every situation.
Like poultices and things salves and things like that. I feel like could
Exactly.
be interesting. Again,
Ex-
I'm
oh,
thinking
go
of our
ahead.
Lord and Savior Ranger Aragorn who like, sniffs the I cannot remember it. I'm not about to try, but like I feel like there's
Mm-hmm.
just you get that kind of crafting survival. Like you're not gonna
Mm-hmm.
save someone, but you could, you know, patch them up with mud or something.
Mm-hmm.
Throw
Yeah,
sap.
exactly, exactly. And then that shows, that makes them so different. I mean, that shares a lot of like thematic with Druid, but to speak of something that you were talking about, like the Druid does it through magic, where the Ranger is an expert, and so they do
In
it through the
nature.
practical methods. I also think that the ranger being to like undo environmental hazards could be a cool like path, or
Yeah.
even like having a whole bunch of different senses and being able to like
Hmm.
point out to like other people,
Hmm.
and that's how they can be really effective in battle.
It did feel like they were trying to give a bit more of those like survivally things throughout the feats
Mm-hmm.
from what I was remembering, like with roving and um I don't even why did I write that way? Like I can't read. um I don't know, it seemed like they're and also just making Hunter's Mark
A fucking
like always prepared and not concentration, I think
mhm.
made sense because like that's like kind of I feel like a
A
I don't think I've
keystone.
ever met a ranger who does not have Hunter's Mark, and so it's kind
You
of why I
have
didn't
to
even
take it, and I'm like, why is it an optional spell? Why is it even a spell? Like,
I didn't
what?
even know that it wasn't something that you just got as a ranger. Like I had to like I was reading this and I was like, isn't that like what already happens? And so it like blew my mind when you don't just get that
Mm-hmm.
and it's a concentration thing and then you're using a spell slot and it just seems like it's such a foundational spell, I guess, for rangers. So I like that they did kind of just say like, okay, we know we know every ranger takes Hunter's Mark, so we're just gonna give it to you.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. I don't know what's up with that. What I love about Pathfinder, Pathfinder, um, is that Hunter's Mark is like the keystone ability, but they have so many different ways that it's expressed, like
Mhm.
to make Rangers completely different. I don't know how much you've looked into it, but like Sam has the precision, so she has to do a whole bunch of actions leading up to her one strike per turn that like levels the opponent. But there's another one that's like a flurry of blows, which makes them
Mhm.
easier to hit. And another one that's just buffing and
Mhm.
debuffing like the enemy and like buffing the team by like
Mhm.
sharing their knowledge. I mean, it's broken. It doesn't work because you have to get a critical or whatever. But they'll fix that. Hopefully, they'll fix it sometime. But that's why it's never worked for 7 because it's borked. But um, so I just don't like and I don't like you're forced into having spells.
Yeah, I think what was interesting about our conversation, and it feels a little bit like kind of the other way that they're going, is that we were saying, we think that there should be a lot more practical natural skills, and that's kind of where they drive their ability to, survive and track and things like that. But it really felt like they were trying to kind of like the bard class, really shoehorn the spell side of things, or the magic side of things into their feats. Like, I don't think a lot of feats changed in like the core of what they are, but it seemed like nature's veil. Like, I know before you could just kind of intuit things that were invisible or
Mm-hmm.
around you, but now it's like, oh, you magically, sorry, nature's veil is when you hide.
Mm-hmm.
um what's the one I'm looking for? It's my gosh.
I honestly don't remember any of the spells for 5e. I gotta be honest. And I've never
Anyways,
played a
I feel like there
ranger
was a
because I knew
part.
they were like.
I feel like there was just like blind sight, that I feel like they have kind of made it seem a bit more naturey, because before it was, and I'm now just trying to figure it out, something else. And then hidden in plain sight, which is in 5e, is where you can just like camouflage yourself, and
Mm-hmm.
now it's that you magically hide yourself. And so it felt like they were taking similar concepts that the ranger had and just saying like, oh, the reason why you're able to do this is because of magic. And it kind of feels like it's moving away from like hidden in plain sight, you were able to
Mm-hmm.
camouflage yourself because you really understand the terrain, and so you're able to like make yourself kind of hidden within
Mm-hmm.
what you've got. I guess the only kind of issue with that is if you do that, unless, I mean, and you're like in a field, like, are you just like like
No, I
flat,
mean like yeah, I don't know. I mean that's up to the player to kind of like come up with how they
figure
do
out how
it,
they, yeah.
and that's so much more fun and like kind of
Hmm.
shows the character.
Yeah,
And
because it even says, sorry, I'm not like reading it. You must have access to fresh mud, dirt, plants, soot, or other natural occurring materials to create your camouflage. Once camouflaged in this way, you can try to hide by pressing yourself up against a solid surface, such as a tree or a wall or whatever. And I think maybe the limitations are what they were trying to take away. Like, hey, you can just like do this thing at like, because it's a higher level feat. And I feel like it can
mm-hmm.
kind of be like annoying if you get this higher level feat and then it's like, well, is there mud around? Oh no, I guess I can't use it. But I do think
Mm-hmm.
that they could still keep the essence of like how you were hiding yourself without just saying, oh, it's magical.
Yeah, I fucking hate that. I know chat hates it as well. But I'm like, so as like you are a homebrew queen, and a lot of people are with 5e. A lot of these like homebrew adventures are in like a low fantasy like setting where magic is really really rare. So one of the
Hmm.
only options that a lot of these player characters can choose is being a ranger, and they kind
Hmm.
of like took that away. And I'm kind of
Hmm.
like, that's dumb. Like,
Yeah.
so I think that yes, should the ranger have the option to take a magical like subclass to kind of who was Liv Tyler in
Eowyn.
Aowen, to be like an Aowen kind of like, I'm mostly a ranger, but like I I I'll make this river like thumping to get rid of these orcs.
It's like
But
I just led.
like
Like
I
I
think
was the
that's a
wrong one.
cool like path that you would be able to choose. But being forced into it, that's not my ranger. I want to be like a dwarf ranger if I'm going to be one, or like I don't know.
Yeah, thank you. I was wrong. It was Arwen. I just Eowyn is the the niece of uh the King of Rohan or whatever.
I don't know. I'm also not a Lord of the Rings
I'm
like
not either.
stan.
I was like,
Yeah.
their names are, I always flip them because their names are like close-ish, you
Mhm.
know. Anyways, but yeah, I know what you mean about like, you have the option to be a bit more of the like naturey, magic-y, like not quite a druid, but
Mhm.
still kind of taking from the like magical side of things.
I'm not a druid. Not yet a ranger. Sorry, that's why I was like giggling because I thought of that. I was just like, it had nothing. It was no shade. It was just, oh, I can make a Britney reference. Um, but yeah, yeah. So I think this ranger is a flop.
You think it's a flop?
I think it's a flop. I think it's a flop. I think that the hunter subclass should just be the ranger. I think they should swap that, and it will be kind of good. But
I think there's just I think they're kind of trying to do the same thing they did with the bard, which is like magic is behind your vibes, and
mm,
I think it then kind of starts to fall maybe closer and closer again into like how is this different than like a druid or something like that.
because you could just be a druid and take like a multi-class into fighter, you
Mhm.
know.
Mhm.
So it's like it's a flop. It's a no for me. It's a no for me. Okay, and the third, last but not least, we have the rogue.
The rogue.
So, and this may be a loaded question. What's the rogue? What are they all about?
I mean, I wrote down slippery. They're stealthy. They've
Mm-hmm.
got like their method of, I think, fighting and interacting with the world is evasive and stealthy,
Mm-hmm.
and like they're not like I see daggers, or like
Mm-hmm.
really like small but like powerful weapons
Mm-hmm.
that do a lot of like or or far away weapons, far away weapons
Mm-hmm.
that keep them at a distance and able to kind of hide or evade stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely agree. They're like the sneakiest. They're a little underhanded. Definitely slippery. You can't really trust them. And I think this class does that.
Hmm.
Only one flavor of that, but I can't really knock it for that. You know what I mean?
What what do you not want to knock for? What's the thing?
Okay, okay. Yeah, the way I explained that was like really confusing. Okay. So the rogue, there's so many different ways to be a rogue, right? And I think Pathfinder does this really well because there's like four subclasses. There's like the cunning rogue, which is a charismatic rogue. Their key like ability score is charisma, and they're all about fainting and
Hmm.
like debuffing through that. And then there's like the mastermind rogue, which I think was in excuse me 5e, and that's all about like moving. That was a cool subclass. Let me talk about something Wizards of the Coast did right. Some of these rogue subclasses popped off. The little mastermind rogue that would I think it would correct me, or maybe I'm getting it confused with like the 4e
Yeah.
warlord. Couldn't you like move around your like friends whenever you sneak attacked, and they could take like a free step or something to like set up advantage or something? That shit was fire. That shit was cool. Like having like a week like you would have to spread your stats out more to put into these key stats, but it was just the flavor was so nice just to have it. Or maybe you could like give your sneak attack to someone else. I don't know how it worked, but that shit was awesome. I hope they keep it. the only subclass they gave us is the most
Hmm.
milk toast
I know, right?
vanilla. Like they need to show us what their vision is here with these, and they only gave us the most basic subclasses, which I don't blame them. I mean, these are the subclasses that people come to like the most, and they're the most like iconic for the class. But just a lot pop off a little bit, like surprise us. Like I don't know, I don't know. What do you? Enough of enough of me. What do you think? What do you think about this rogue?
I I mean, again, I think I felt like of all of them, it felt a little bit more like they just kind of moved the feats around as to when you get them. Like obviously there were differences, but I kind of I don't have a lot of opinions on it personally. Um but I think kind of like what you said though, I feel like the rogue you can do so much with it and it's very versatile. And again, the subclass they gave us was thief, and so it's like, well, obviously you could be a thief with a rogue.
Yeah.
And it feels a little bit like I maybe for me rogues it comes with the subclass inspiration. Like, are you going to be a thiefy rogue? Are you going to be like a
But here's the thing about this thief rogue subclass. That's just rogue shit. A lot of this is rogue
I
shit.
know, right?
A lot of this is just like, why isn't this in the main class? Like, none of it's that. I mean, it's not that
Like
great.
it's that, yeah, I don't know. I just
I do like how they get a climb speed.
I do like that, and I liked how instead of in Thieves' Cant you got just a second language as opposed to like the like they're like, oh, in 5e, in addition, you get a set of secret signs and symbols, and it's like no one ever uses that. Like I don't think I've ever seen anyone use. It's like so much more.
I was gonna bring that up. Like, stop making thieves can't. Like, stop trying to make thieves can't work. Like,
Like no one uses Thieves' Cant, or like they kept Thieves' Cant, but they were like also we'll just give you another language, which I think is like a lot more helpful than Thieves' Cant and then like secret signs and symbols that
mm-hmm.
no one again like Thieves' Cant in theory in my mind is already kind of secret signs and symbols, so it's kind of like they gave you nothing additionally, and so this felt like they at least made Thieves' Cant or that first level feat like a little bit more
That should just be
useful.
like a normal feat to take. Because
It's
if
just
you,
part of who you are.
yeah, or like like a skill feat in Pathfinder, they have
Hmm.
that kind of like secret speech or whatever. But like, how many times are you gonna have multiple rogues in a party where they can speak thieves' cant to each other?
Or like I guess to your point about like thieves are already like rogue shit, like what if you don't want to be a thiefy rogue and you're like, why am I just getting thieves can't, I'm never going to use this, this is not like applicable to what I want to do, I want to
Mm-hmm.
be this kind of rogue, I'm not a thief rogue, I don't,
Now
you know,
that
that's
should
not
be in the thief.
it should be
Like,
in the thief. And so I feel like, that I think what you're saying is allowing someone to pick it, or I don't know, it felt a little bit less like useless, but I think it's only because you get a second language.
yeah, it's just I always thought thieves' cant. It's just like, okay, so let me get this straight. Thieves from all over this giant, giant world and through multiple different dimensions of multiple different ancestries, some of whom only communicate like psychically, or I don't know. Some of them don't even have arms, like they have tentacles or something. Like all these different differences, they all know the same thief language. There's a thief
Exactly.
school. They learn it in thief. There's a thief,
Or
like
you're like an assassin for like the royal court. Like why you're not dabbling with the thieves in the like, gutters of the city. You're not dabbling with
mm,
like the like you're not gonna it just wouldn't make sense to then also have this like language that's just across the board a rogue language essentially. It, and now that I'm really thinking about it, it is kind of
the dumbest thing.
like if you're I think they really make it so hard for you to think of a rogue as not a thief because then they start off level one, thieves can't. And I mean, in 5e, you have, an assassin as a subclass and things like that. But like,
Mm. I think
I
you
mean,
get Thieves' Cat at first level in 5e as well,
you
and
do,
it's
you
it's still
do.
like I'm never
It's
gonna use this. Like,
yeah, it sounds cool in theory.
I think they should just make it like a basic feat that everyone should take. So then you can have like a criminal operation, but not
Yeah.
everyone. But that language is shared between you guys specifically.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Or like again, if you are going to be like a thief, you
Mm-hmm.
have a thieves kit within your organization.
Mm-hmm.
Again, like I don't you don't want like I'm just like reading through.
And this thief, if you look at it, they're okay. The only thing that's really thiefy that like I want as a thief specifically is like fast hands, make a dexterity
Mhm.
check as a bonus action in battle. Like that's nice.
Yeah.
Or a sleight of hand, I should say. But everything else
Yeah.
I think is just this is like
Like
acrobat stuff or like a
or
magical
like
trickster. Like
yeah, like use magical or use magic device. Like what if my thief doesn't want to be magic?
yeah,
Like or
what if you're in a low fantasy setting and it's just like I don't know. When I think of a thief, I think of like Lupin the Third, or like I don't know, Ocean's 11, like kind of thief. Like there's not a lot in here about like picking locks or like pickpocketing or
yeah.
getting like escaping or using like fun like gadgets and stuff like that. Like it would be
Yeah.
cool to have like a prescient planner skill within the thief where it's just like, oh, I managed to pack this specific item for this specific reason and like
Mhm.
not have to worry about magic shit. But they don't want to do that. They don't want they it's
They don't
only
want
only high fantasy with D&D, nothing else.
yeah, I am again, I feel like there wasn't a ton. I feel like a lot of the changes for the rogue was like how like the different I just felt like they kind of just shuffled their feet around mostly. They said like uncanny dodge is now at this point and slippery mind is now at this point. And so that's why I feel like I have no so then we just like talked about thief, which is just a subclass
I
for
know because it's just like so milk toast. But I
Mhm.
mean, and this kind of helps them prove like, see, it's not a new edition. It's an evolution. It's a
Mhm.
living document that's always going to be changed. And it's kind of like mind boggling to me. That part. But I mean, if it's not broke, don't fix it. I mean, the rogue was one of the better classes. It's iconic. It like everyone steals these mechanics from 5e for a rogue for a reason, so I can't really blame them. But I think this was a subclass that they could show us like a little more like where D&D is heading like creatively. Whether that's like a spelljammer like subclass or an Eberron subclass,
Mhm.
just really like pop off a little bit. But
Yeah.
I guess no,
No. Yeah,
no.
I guess that's really why I don't have a lot to say, and I feel a little bit better about it because I was like, I feel like I had so much more to say about like where they were going with the bard and the ranger, and I felt like I got it, and I just,
Mm.
I mean, they took away blind sense, I think is what they did,
Oh, they gave it
which
to the ranger instead of the
I
rogue.
think so.
Oh, see, I did. I was going to check up. I was going to reread like all these classes in 5e, but I
Yeah, I think I
didn't.
did myself a wee bit of a disservice though, because now I'm like, which one is it though? Did I just make that up?
I
Like
don't
I'm having to
know.
like check my notes.
No worries. So, what do you think, all in all of these class changes? Does it make you excited for D&D 60? I mean D&D 5.5. I mean D&D 1.
Yeah, it definitely does. I feel like especially starting off with the Bard and the Ranger and then, the Rogue, I guess, but like those two, it feels like they're really trying to not balance the classes, but make them like again, like not so hard to pin down as to like what they're supposed to be and like why
Mm-hmm.
they're unique and different, like why you would want to play these characters besides the vibes, because I feel like for some people, like, you pick a bard because you want to be the bard, you want to be that bard in your mind, but then when you're trying to create the bard, you're like, okay, what do I do, how do I
Yeah.
do it? You could have just created a bardy character, a charismatic character
Mhm.
in a different class. Like, why are
Mhm.
you picking the bard, or why are you picking the ranger
Mhm.
besides wanting to be the idea of a bard or a ranger?
Mhm.
um so I am excited. I think, again, these aren't classes I've played before. It doesn't mean that I
Mhm.
never will or aren't interested in. I don't really feel like I have like a specific class type that I like. I think it's just like I have a character idea and I'm like,
Yeah.
how do I make this work? Um, it definitely makes me excited. I think interested in how they imbued magic more into the bard. I
Mhm.
think that makes it a bit more distinct. Uh,
Mhm.
and interested in kind of the less nature, or not less nature, but the more magic behind the ranger. I feel like it'll be interesting to see how they. I'm intrigued the character, like the classes I have played, to
Mhm.
see what changes are made there. Um, so definitely intrigued. What about you?
I'm not. But I'm a hateful bitch, so take this all with a grain of salt. I don't know. I was like disappointed. Um, I
Did you want like more? You wanted them to like push it further into distinction?
I feel like D&D is in like a really interesting place right now and like kind of at a crossroads of really where to go. I mean, we have like the mechanical and strategic crunch of like Pathfinder 2e to really fill like a niche. And I
Mm-hmm.
really think D&D could go more into like a theater of the mind kind of
Mm-hmm.
direction and be more about role playing, be more about exploration, and really make I mean, they really need to fix their battle system because it's just like I'm just gonna like this, like people just slamming into each other, attack after attack after attack. And I just don't like that. And I feel like they really didn't do either of those. They're really towing a line instead of trying to make a really distinctive game. I don't think they've added any exploration abilities or
Mm-mm.
any like those things that I think the bard, rogue, and ranger are supposed to do. I think they're supposed to be the experts in the exploration phase, and
Yeah.
all of what we've seen is what they do in battle, and that's not why I pick these characters. I pick a
Very true.
bard to like I'm gonna be the problem solver. I'm gonna solve puzzles.
I'm gonna be quick on my feet.
I'm gonna
I'm
be
gonna
quick on
like.
my feet, exactly, and I'm gonna be like really I'm gonna be have a really limited set of skills that I'm gonna be forced to be creative with.
Mm-hmm.
And I want the ability to be able to do that successfully.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm just Bardic Inspo, heal, heal, heal. Whereas with the Ranger, I want to feel like I am looking at my environment and trying to leverage that into an advantageous position. Um, whether it's through crafting snares or my genius idea of different spell lists based off of your environment, foraging, I don't know, just like being the one who's prepared, like the Boy Scout or something. And with the rogue, yeah, the rogue, you got the sneak attack, but like, I want to be stealing shit. I want to have a mechanic specifically about stealing other people's items and severely or like sabotaging them.
I feel like I've just like one, I'm just so like uh influenced. I'm like, yeah, maybe I'm not excited anymore. But I do like in the way that you kind of went through it, I feel like I have this dynamic now on like this like rogue ranger bard trio where the bard is like distracting and the rogue is in the background like shooting off arrows at someone or like sneaking up and doing something, and then the
Mhm.
ranger is like feeling the what's going on around them and like really like making moves based on like their inferences of what's going on with the nature. And it's like this whole
Mhm.
like kind of dynamic where they're all kind of experts in people, experts in nature, and experts in like stealth or
Mhm. Or
like.
yeah, that's exactly what I think should really be like I mean like pre and post battle.
because like the druid, I think this would help distinguish the ranger from a druid. Is like I feel like the druid is like it's intuitive. You know, they just
Mm-hmm.
intuit nature. They're one with nature. They feel nature all around them, and the ranger has like dedicated their life to being an expert
Mm-hmm.
into that practical nature, and I think the same
And
with like
work, like seeing how they work together, because I view the druid as like, I'm gonna change, and like the wizard, they're like, and this is 4E thinking, they're called like controllers, so like they control the battlefield. And I feel like the druid would be, I'm summoning a tree here,
hmm
where the ranger would like climb the tree and shoot from it, or like grab a branch and like make a spring trap or something from it, and
hmm
really meld together like harmoniously. But there's none of that shit in here. There's none of that. It's just like, it's giving very video game. It's giving
hmm
very, we need to make this compatible for Baldur's Gate 4. Like, and I mean, that might be great. I don't know. Just
I mean,
meh.
too. Yeah, it's been a little bit since I've played 5e, but I really feel like I just completely lost my train
No
of thought.
worries. It's late. It's late. You work today.
But
I still haven't started the
no,
job. So.
he's like going ham on a door right now in the background. I'm like, you good, bro?
Mhm.
He's just upset because he doesn't agree with closed doors in the house, and someone closed a bathroom door. How dare they? How dare they do the bathroom things in peace without a
Mhm.
cat hanging out? So I just got really distracted for
No
that. But
worries.
yeah, I definitely see what you're saying though. I think I was saying I think it's just been a minute since I've played, 5e and I haven't played any of these classes
Mhm.
before. I've just kind of observed, and so I feel like I could I could see why it's kind of a letdown when you felt like you were gonna get more juice and more like fleshing out of these kind of I think sometimes hard to pin down
Mhm.
classes.
Yeah. Yeah. But we'll see. Maybe they'll make changes. Probably not.
And
But
that's why
yeah,
we can give feedback.
yeah, hey, I'm not gonna fill out that. I'm not gonna fill it out though. I'll think about it. But they can watch the channel if they want to know, and give me, and make sure they like and subscribe and
Like
hit the
and
bell
subscribe with
notification to make sure you stay up to date with all of our games. But thank you so much, Eat Free, for coming in. And viewers, let us know what you think of these playtest materials. You may disagree with us completely, and I want to know. If you comment on my YouTube comments and call me the F slur, I'll, no, please don't, actually. Don't. Also, like, please give me engagement, but not like that. Peacefully tell me what you think about the new peacefully tell us about what you think about like these ideas, these opinions. Maybe you have a different idea of what these classes mean to you, or maybe there's a different game system that wizards can pull from and like put it into the game. I want to know. I want to learn more. I'm obsessed with tabletop role-playing games, so I want to know what you think. But Eat Free, thank you so much for coming with us. Be sure to check us
Yes.
both out on this Twitch channel, twitch.tv/messb20. We're both in a whole bunch of campaigns. Hopefully, a Vampire the Masquerade one soon. Doom Dynasty every other Wednesday. That's closing up soon as of this filming. And Pathfinder
Pathfinder
Society, which is
Society.
my homebrew campaign, and Pathfinder Second Edition. That one's crazy. And yeah, be sure to check us out. But thank you so much, and I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful day or night. Bye
Bye.
bye.